A boy screams, his body convulsing. A rabbi blows a shofar, one sharp, piercing blast. And just like that, the spirit vanishes. This isn't a scene from a horror movie. It's a real Jewish exorcism performed in the 1500s. When I first heard that Judaism even had exorcisms, I thought, no way. That's not something we do. But the deeper I dug, the more I realized that Jewish exorcism isn't just about demons or spirits. It's about struggles much closer to home. Distortion, pain, being trapped in a mental and emotional prison. Things I'm very familiar with, because for years, I've been fighting trauma that was choking my soul and mind. So I wanted to get at the root of what exorcism really is and what it can teach us about confronting our own inner demons. This belief left me paralyzed. It warped my whole relationship with religion and turned it into this all-or-nothing, cold, terrifying experience. My trauma made me think that Judaism was a religion with no compassion. You're in or you're out. You're right or you're wrong. My soul needed to be free. I needed to exorcise what was hurting me most. But exorcism sounded so extreme to me, so foreign. So to find out what it's really about, I sat down with Rabbi Pinney Dunner.
The soul is an independent entity of the body. When the soul leaves the body, what happens to it? In Jewish tradition, the idea is that when the soul separates from the body, it goes to some heavenly realm.
Your soul is what makes you uniquely you. It's your spiritual essence, a little piece of God that we all have within us. And when someone leaves this earth, their soul doesn't just evaporate or disappear. It returns to a metaphysical plane where it's reunited with its spiritual source.
It has this encounter with the Supreme Being, with God, and goes through some kind of process of cleansing after having been associated with a physical body.
This cleansing is kind of a spiritual detox for the soul, a metaphysical juice cleanse, a process that frees it of contamination from past wrongdoing. In Judaism, we refer to this place as gehinnom. Some cultures call this purgatory. A place where the soul goes to be purified of its sins, and once the soul is cleansed, it can ascend even further to the realm of Gan Eden, which is often translated as heaven. But some souls don't merit this purifying process in the heavenly realm. Some souls are so troubled or so damaged that they need a little more time in the physical world before they can have this encounter with God. It's like the soul is suspended, neither here nor there. It can't move forward.
And they sort of float around within the physical realm, within the world, waiting for an opportunity so that they can get into heaven. And in the meantime, they're very frustrated, those souls. And on some occasions, at least this is the traditional view of what happens, those souls will possess a human body so that they can communicate their problem and hopefully have it resolved. Those souls will require an exorcism.
These troubled souls are trapped between two worlds. They're no longer living, but they can't move on to the spiritual realm. They're deeply tormented and they need to be healed. But the only way they can communicate what they need is to use someone else's voice. And so, they'll enter someone else's body and speak through them. This whole makes me want to hide under the covers. Are there just angry, anguished souls floating around, looking for someone to possess? Can this actually be real? Well, the idea of souls in limbo goes way back, all the way to the time of the great sage Rabbi Akiva, who lived about 2,000 years ago. According to an ancient legend, he met one of these troubled souls.
Rabbi Akiva is wandering through a cemetery and he encounters a very strange-looking figure. And he says, "What are you doing here?" And this being says to him, "I'm a soul that cannot get into heaven."
The legend goes that this person, whose soul was now homeless, had betrayed his fellow Jews to the ruling Romans. And so, his soul was doomed to wander the earth until it went through some kind of repentance process. This concept of souls lodging themselves in a living person really took off in the 1500s. And we know about it through the teachings of the Kabbalists. Kabbalah is the study of the spirit world, of all unseen forces that run our physical world. And the Kabbalists believe strongly in this idea of a displaced soul. And here's the really interesting thing. Although a lot of the science around psychology came centuries later, even the Kabbalists of the 1500s knew something was different between a person experiencing a mental episode and someone who was potentially possessed. And they'd go through a whole method of diagnosis to figure out what exactly was going on. I talked with Professor Yossi Chayes, an expert in Jewish exorcism, to learn more about what exactly this involved.
So the first thing was to diagnose, and that could be done by checking for certain symptoms. Were there lumps, strange lumps appearing on odd parts of the body that were moving around? Was there the ability of a possessed person to speak languages that they don't know? A very strong diagnostic tool is pulse diagnosis, using associations with the pulse that were tied to traditions in the Kabbalah that link different pulses to different vowels in the Hebrew vowel system.
So if someone did have company, they'd perform an exorcism. But first, they had to figure out who they were dealing with.
You gotta know its name. The exorcist must know the name of the being that's possessing its victim in order to have power over it.
The exorcist would communicate with the soul to try to convince it to surrender its name, sometimes with a carrot.
The exorcist will say, I am going to say petitionary prayers for your soul, and I take it upon my authority to say that if you cooperate with me in this matter and you agree to leave the victim without causing her any further harm, I will personally guarantee that you will be admitted into gehinnom.
Or sometimes with a stick.
You can try to threaten it with bans.
In Judaism, there's a concept of banning someone from a community, excommunicating them physically or spiritually. It was an extreme form of punishment for someone whose actions were deeply hurtful to the people around them.
So this is a kind of spiritual ban that the Kabbalists believed was possible to enact upon the soul of the dead as well as upon the living.
And once the soul was named, the exorcist would urge it to leave the body of the possessed person, usually by invoking or reciting names of God or angels considered deeply holy or even magical, or by shocking the soul with sound or smoke.
Another thing would be the use of Jewish ritual objects, the most prominent example being the shofar, the ram's horn.
But sometimes these rituals had the unintended effect of causing the possessed person to lose their life. The whole thing was pretty extreme. And the exorcist wasn't only dealing with the soul doing the possessing, it was trying to expel something else, something much more sinister.
There is a kind of satanic demon that is like the prison guard that is attending all the time to that lost, tormented soul.
The exorcist would recite special prayers to banish the satanic overseer so that they could reach the soul and help the soul be freed. Yikes. Piercing shofar blasts, smoke, satanic overseers. This all sounds pretty spooky and supernatural. Can it actually be real? Were the Kabbalists really dealing with broken souls? Or just broken people? It's hard to say for sure. These days, we're more likely to assume that someone behaving strangely or erratically is really suffering from a mental health condition. But in a cultural context, where spirit possession was believed to be possible or even plausible, conducting an exorcism made sense. And even for these medieval exorcists, many of them believed that no situation was hopeless. No one was irredeemable. These troubled souls weren't evil spirits or a demonic force, but they had a kernel of goodness.
Once you get to the state that you're, post-life, but in a soul form, you're very much aware of all the things that you did wrong during your lifetime, because there's no lies, there's no fakery, there's no yearning to do something which you shouldn't be doing.
The soul inhabiting another body is seeking something out. It wants to heal and become whole again. And that's what the exorcism ritual does. It speaks directly to the soul to help it purify and be ready to enter the heavenly realm. These rituals allowed the unsettled soul that had been so terribly wounded by its past to become whole again, to break free of whatever was blocking it from ascending to the heavenly realm. And for the person being possessed, the exorcism ritual helped them shed whatever had overtaken them. It freed them from whatever was possessing them so that they could go back to the life they had before. And the mechanics of it sound awfully familiar. Examining the symptoms, naming the problem, figuring out how to treat it. These are the hallmarks of modern-day psychology.
It's clear that the person who had the Dibbuk, who had been possessed by a soul, really was suffering from some kind of severe psychiatric condition, and had they lived in the modern era, that would have been diagnosed and they would have been dealt with in that way. But that doesn't preclude the possibility that human beings can be transplanted by someone else's soul.
Maybe what was possessing them really was someone else's damaged soul. Or maybe it was a mental or emotional state that was stopping them from fully living life. Distortions that warp their thinking and their perspective and their entire perception of the world. I know something about this because my distortions were a negative force clinging to me, overwhelming me. I lived in fear of divine punishment. If I messed up even slightly, I was bad. It was like God had a scale hanging over me at all times, and if I leaned too far the wrong way, that was it. I was overtaken, not by a ghost or a demon, but by ideas that held me prisoner. And when I finally worked up the strength to tell a trusted spiritual mentor about these distortions, he helped me realize that I could let go. Like the rabbis who freed someone from the grips of a troubled soul, I could let go of everything that hurt me and held me back. And once I let go, I could heal. I could heal my relationship with myself, with God, with religion. I could reframe my relationship to Judaism as a religion that doesn't want me to fail, as a religion that includes forgiveness and second chances and the opportunity to pick yourself right back up again if you do something wrong. So maybe these stories about wandering souls and possession and exorcism aren't just about supernatural events. Maybe they're metaphors for something we all deal with: the wrong impulses, the heavy emotions, the nagging voices in our heads. Exorcism in Jewish tradition wasn't just about casting out a spirit. It was about making space for pain, helping someone return to themselves. It was about restoration. Restoration and return is at the heart of Judaism. No one is beyond the ability to get back to deeper spirituality. And Jewish practice gives us constant opportunities for this. It's why we have so many rituals and prayers and entire portions of the year devoted to spiritually restoring ourselves. Judaism believes that we are all capable of casting off spiritual blockages that prevent us from being our truest, most whole selves and from connecting more deeply to God.
Occasionally we have to say, God, I'm sorry I did something which I shouldn't have done, but I still love you and you still love me, and that relationship should continue. So teshuvah is the process which we all have in every relationship that we have, where we want to make sure that the relationship is sustained, that it doesn't decay to the state where that relationship no longer exists.
Return in Judaism is like exorcism light. It's about healing the soul before it even gets to the breaking point. That's why this whole voyage of discovery surprised me, because it turns out Jewish exorcism is about healing, about naming what's wrong, about sitting with your pain, and then letting it go. Whether or not you believe in the idea of a wandering soul, we all carry things that cling to us: regret, shame, anger, guilt, anxiety. And sometimes the only way forward is to cast them out, but with compassion, awareness, allowing us to return to our truest selves.